Welcome to our 7 days literature trip. This time we prepared a tour during which you can visit 7 house museums of English writers of the 19th century. Our tour begins on Monday in Coleridge Cottage in Somerset. This 17th century cottage was home to Coleridge between 1797 and 1799. Despite the poet living here for just a few years, the house and its surroundings played a huge role in British history, giving birth to a new age in literature. The cottage has remained in the care of the National Trust for over 100 years, and these rooms are decorated as they would have been when Coleridge lived here. He wrote here some of his finest works, including The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, Kubla Khan, Frost at Midnight, Christabel, and This Lime Tree Bower My Prison. On Tuesday, we moved to Dorset to see Hardy's Cottage and Max Gate. The most famous writer to come out of Dorset, Thomas Hardy, lived most of his life in the town of Dorchester. Next to an ancient woodland sits the house in which he was born, spent the first 34 years of his life, and composed some of his early writings including Under the Greenwood Tree and Far from the Madding Crowd. Just 3 miles down the road is the house that he lived in later life. Hardy trained as an architect before he turned his hand to writing, and designed the imposing Max Gate, named for local gatekeeper Mac, in the Queen Anne style. The house was built by Hardy himself, with help from his father. Next, we go to East Sussex, to the home of Rudyard Kipling, the Batemans. Kipling and his wife fell in love with this impressive 17th century mansion during a visit, proclaiming, "That's she, the only she," on viewing. Kipling's study is of course a must-see, and be sure not to miss the chance to take in his prestigious Nobel medal, original paintings for the Jungle Book, and the Rolls-Royce Phantom 1, which he purchased in 1928. He wrote there Kim, Traffics and Discoveries, and Rewards and Fairies. On Thursday, we finally go to the capital city of Great Britain to admire Charles Dickens' museum. This 4-storied Gregorian terraced house is Dickens' only remaining house in London. Remarkably, though he only spent 2 years of his life in the house on Doughty Street, this is where he penned some of his best-loved novels. The house contains the world's most comprehensive collection of Dickens' belongings, and includes a writing desk at which he imagined and developed many of his characters, possibly his greatest skill. A must-see piece in the museum is a portrait by Robert William Buss, the artist who illustrated the Pickwick Papers. It shows Dickens at his writing desk, surrounded by the beloved characters he gave life to. On Friday, we go to Cambridgeshire to see John Clare Cottage. This cottage was home to John Clare from 1793 to 1832. Clare's popular first poems captured a vivid snapshot of English nature, despite his lack of formal learning. Now owned by the John Clare Trust, the house has been restored using traditional building methods to tell the story of Clare and his work. Particular attention has been paid to the garden, where visitors can experience the flora of an early 19th century cottage garden and imagine the rural landscape as Clare would have experienced it in his day. While in Helpston, Clare produced his earlier and most loved poems, including the collections Poems Descriptive of Rural Life and Scenery and the Village Minstrel. Next, we take a long ride to West Yorkshire, to Bronte Parsonage Museum. The youngest daughters of what remains quite possibly the most famous literary family in history, Bronte sisters Charlotte, Emily and Anne spent most of their tragically short lives here. In the mid-19th century, when the family inhabited the parsonage, the town was heavily polluted and death rates were high. Indeed, all members of Bronte family survived, except for Trio's father. He died before reaching the age of 40. Despite their unfortunate fates, these three sisters produced some of the finest and best-loved English novels of all time. The sisters undertook most of their writing in the dining room and would pace around the table, sharing their ideas. On Sunday, we go to our final destination, Hilltop in Cumbria, where Beatrix Potter lived. Walking through Hilltop is like stepping into a Beatrix Potter storybook. Potter often used real-world objects and settings as direct inspiration for the nostalgic illustrations in her charming children's stories, and many objects from the house can be seen within her books. Having bought the farm in 1905, aided by the success of The Tale of Peter Rabbit, Beatrix Potter developed a love of farming. She was also an active campaigner and supporter to the National Trust, leaving her home, 400 acres of land and several farms, to the Trust when she died in 1943. Our trip will give you the opportunity to feel the atmosphere of houses of popular English writers and poets of the 19th and early 20th century. Check the link in the description down below to purchase your tickets now.